Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Don't forget about my COVID gift that I'm offering each of you during the month of April. Yes, my online course, The Ultimate Money Game Plan, usually $600, is free. I want you to get your finances organized during the time that we are sheltering in place. We're quarantined, got nothing better to do. I want you to walk out feeling good, feeling fresh, feeling financially organized. This course walks you through everything from improving your money mindset to budgeting to planning for the future. You can find the link and the promo code in the show notes. Okay, for today's episode, I have both my friend and colleague, Rob Bertman, here to share his money memoir with us. So Rob and I both moonlight for Student Loan Planner, where we have the privilege of squashing people's student loan anxiety in just 60 minutes. But we both run our own companies as well, and Rob's is perfect for our Financial Literacy Month theme, budgeting. Many families struggle with budgeting, and it can be hard to get on the same page with your spouse and to figure out how to organize things in light of having multiple children doing multiple different activities. That's why Rob started his company, The Family Budget Expert. And he is, guys, let me just tell you. He helps families improve their lives and financial situation by helping them alleviate the number one relationship stressor, which is challenges with spending. Rob has earned both his CFA and CFP, and he works with individuals, he does corporate trainings, and professional speaking. Rob's going to share with us his 3-part budgeting system and the 5 lessons every child should be taught about money. If you're doing life with a significant other or you have children, this is an episode that you are not going to want to miss. Rob, thanks so much for being on the show. I am super excited to have one of my buddies on today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so glad that you reminded me that you are the family budget expert, and who better to have on to talk all things family, all things kids than the family budget expert himself.
Yeah, well, thanks. I definitely have some experience there. I'm happy to share. And I've been loving your podcast too. I've been sharing it with a lot of people. So thanks for everything you're putting out there.
I am doing the good work of spreading the good news of budgeting and all things financial literacy, at least trying. All right. So why don't we start by telling the audience a little bit about you? So where are you from? What kind of upbringing did you have? What kind of things going on in your household as it pertains to your first memories of money?
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio, in a small town called Canton, Ohio, which a lot of people know for the Football Hall of Fame. Surprisingly enough, I've never set foot in it before, even though it's a couple miles away from my house.
Oh my goodness.
But I grew up in, I call it a middle-class family. And my parents both grew up very, very poor. My dad grew up in the Lower East Side in New York City, immigrant parents, and worked hard, worked his way out, met my mom in graduate school. So my upbringing it had different phases to it, because when I was growing up at first, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. So 2 older sisters who were 8 and 6 years older than me, and then an older brother who's 2 years older than me. And I'm the baby. I'm a 40-year-old baby. So as I was growing up, when I was young, my parents were very much into spending conservatively and being very intentional with their money and not really buying too much stuff. But then as I got older, my dad especially got into more of a materialistic phase because he started making more money, accumulating some wealth. And so how families deal with money, it hits different kids in different ways. So the kid who grows up without the means, without the parents having means, versus the kid who grows up once their parents have accumulated that, may have 2 different total money mindsets, even though they grew up in the same household. I use the example, I have a buddy of mine he's the oldest of 3 brothers. And when he turned 16, he had to work hard and help pay for his car. And he got like a Dodge Neon. And then his younger brother, who's like 5 years younger than him, his parents had to accumulate some wealth, and they bought him like a brand new Mustang convertible.
Oh, no.
And he's like, what the heck? What the heck?
This is not fair. What the heck? For sure.
Right. So I would say that it impacted me in a lot of ways. Something that I really, really remember was I was in high school when my dad was going through this materialistic phase, and there's this girl I really, really liked. And I finally got the courage to ask her out on a date. And my dad's like, take my car, here's some money to take her out to a nice meal and all this stuff. So I pick her up and I'm going to take her to this nice meal that my dad gave me money for, driving in my dad's car. It's like a big Buick, as opposed to my used 10-year-old Chevy Blazer that was falling apart. So she gets in the car and I was like, oh, I'm going to take you to this nice restaurant. And she's like, Rob, I just want to hang out and go to KFC. I just wanted to go get some chicken and just hang out and then go to this party. And I was like, oh. So anyway, she was kind of giving me the silent treatment the rest of the night. We went to this party later and she totally ditched me.
Oh, no.
And I had a crush on this girl for a long time. And I think it's because I was trying to be a little bit showy with money, and that was not her vibe. That was not her thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible with women. Fortunately, I'm married now. I've been married for 11 years. So I made it happen somehow, but I just don't have a lot of self-confidence. But anyway, that kind of stuck with me. And ever since then, I've never really been a big showy person with money. I don't really like to have anything auspicious or like drive a fancy car or anything like that. But I do understand the importance of having it and spending it wisely. But for me, being showy, that was like one of the things that just left an impression with me, that like, I don't be showy with money. But everyone's different. But that's one of the times that I can remember. Another thing is my dad was really into investing. So when I was in high school and junior high and college, I saved up some money and started investing on my own. I'm 40 now. So when I was investing, this was like the late 90s. So the tech boom. So I thought I was a money genius, because it's like you buy something, it goes up 20%, then you sell it for something that went up 22%. And you kind of keep riding the wave up. And that dot-com bubble crashed as I was leaving college. And I realized, hey, this isn't so easy. I better learn how to do this.
Maybe I'm not the genius. The market was just doing something really interesting at that time.
Yeah, it was so easy. It's kind of like in 2006, 5, 6, and 7, when people were getting into real estate investing. It's like you couldn't do anything wrong. You think you're a genius. And then all of a sudden something bad happens and you feel like, oh, now I really have to learn how to do this.
Tell us a little bit about that. How did you learn? What kind of education did you decide to get as it pertains to financial education and financial literacy?
When I was in college, I actually went in going pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor.
Oh.
My whole life I wanted to be a doctor. And then I took about 3 semesters of pre-med courses. I'm like, nope, this isn't for me. It's too hard. I fell in love more with finance and investing at that point. So my goal was always to be a portfolio manager, run a mutual fund.
Interesting. Things I didn't know about you, Rob.
Yeah. So I studied organizational psychology and development, took some classes in business, and graduated by the skin of my teeth because I changed my majors a couple times. Graduated within 4 years and was off working for an investment company, mutual fund company, that I was basically working with advisors to help pick mutual funds for their clients.
Was that work very rewarding?
It was. So the whole idea was I was basically working in a call center. I was living in Chicago making like nothing. I mean, I made cheese quesadillas every night for dinner. I never went out. I rode my bike to work. I couldn't park my car in the city. It was too expensive. So I basically didn't do anything. But the whole idea was that if you performed well in the job, that you would have an internship with the research department of this mutual fund company. And that's what I wanted to do. And at the time, there was someone that I worked with that was working on their CFA, their Chartered Financial Analyst designation, which is what you need to do to be able to do securities analysis, investment analysis, analyze balance sheets, and kind of like corporate finance is part of it, and accounting and all that.
To be really smart, guys. Let me just tell you, if you have a CFA, you're brilliant. So.
Well, I don't know. I just think they like to fail people. The pass rate's like less than 50%, and there are 3 levels. It's given once a year. I just think they're trying to fail people to make money off the testing. I'm partially kidding. I mean, it is hard to get.
And you have it. So you got there.
Yes, I got there.
But that's not what you're doing now. So how did you pivot from this was your dream job, you passed this test that was extremely hard to pass, or you got really lucky because they were just trying to fill all the other people, and so they had to pass a couple of you to make the pass rate work.
Right.
No, but really, like, how did you go from that to where you are now?
So I lived in Chicago for a little bit at that job. Then I moved to New York for a few years and did equity trading. So basically trading stocks for big mutual funds and hedge funds. My whole end game was to go be a portfolio manager, manage a fund. In 2005 or six, I moved to St. Louis and started working as a portfolio manager and as a research analyst, picking individual stocks. Worked with a great company, great people, great clients. I thought I was going to do it my whole life. I love this stuff. And we have a great track record of outperforming the market over time. Even though some people believe in that, some people don't, we had a good track record of it. We were able to keep it up over a long period of time. Then I had my first kid. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know, I have three kids right now, Charlie, George, and Nina, and they're 10, 8, and 3 years old. And as any of you who have kids know, once that first kid comes around, things change. Less time, less money, but you still need to keep your sanity. So my first kid was born and my wife and I were trying to figure out, how do we make this work? How do we maintain the lifestyle that we want, but also with less time and less money? And at that time too, a lot of our friends started having kids and approaching me saying, hey, Rob, I know you're in finance. Can you help us with our money? We don't know what to do. At the time, the company that I was working for wasn't set up to help with that kind of a thing. We were just mainly money managers for like a portion of people's stock portfolio.
I think you bring up a really good point, because there's a lot of people that don't realize the various kinds of people that exist in the financial industry. And it's like, oh, you do math, you do money. Can you help me with this thing? And it's like a completely different area of expertise. So you were focusing specifically on investment portfolios, not on people's day-to-day finances.
Exactly. These people were people who had investable assets, and they usually had a couple different money managers or advisors they were working with. And we managed a portion of their portfolio that was dedicated to the stock market. But I knew enough about personal finance. I'd been doing that, but I decided to get my CFP at the time and study for that and get that and just learn about how financial professionals do that. So I got my CFP, started working on things personally. We actually launched this young investor initiative in the firm that I was at before. So we built it up to, in a short amount of time, to like 22 clients. We charged them a lower fee, managed their portfolio with indexing because they didn't have enough investable assets to do the individual stock thing, and then help them really from A to Z with all things financial planning. So, and I realized I really, really love that. I almost loved it more than the securities analysis and investment analysis. So here I am, a partner in this firm, thought I was going to be here forever, questioning myself if this is really what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I came to the conclusion that I want to have a wider reach, be able to reach more people and have a greater impact on their day-to-day lives. So it was a tough conversation to have with my partners at the time. And we're still very, very close. We still have our money invested with them. And so I believe strongly in what they're doing. But eventually I just had to leave and start Family Budget Expert.
Oh my goodness, this is the most amazing story ever. So the previous job, was it pretty good earnings as well, despite, like you said, deciding that wasn't your passion?
It was great earnings. And by the way, this is not the best story ever. I think you have one of the greatest stories ever.
This is a really good story to me. So
okay, good.
Everyone's story exists in each person's perception. And I'm loving your story, Rob.
Oh, well, thank you.
You left this job and you decided, okay, I'm going to go after something that I'm more passionate about, but you started your own thing. So you own your own company. It's called Family Budget Expert. Mm-hmm. And you had to get it up and running, get it off the ground. Tell me a little bit about that process, what the mindset was, and then maybe you took less money for a while in order to get this thing going. So how did you manage your budget during that time?
Oh, it was crazy. If having kids was budget update 2.0, I went through like 3, 4, and 5.0 when I became an entrepreneur, because things drastically changed. You go to, basically a single income household for a while. And when I first started, my whole goal when I left the other company was I wanted to help a lot of people with financial planning. So I actually created an online financial planning course, and I put testers in it, had some awesome videos and content, was like going to give people exactly what I thought they needed. It took me like about 9 months to get everything going, and I launched it. And I remember looking at my computer thinking, I'm going to help more people than I was in my last job. I'm going to be making more money at the same time. It's great. I'm adding value. I'm creating value. I'm helping people where they need help. So I remember that first day I launched, and I'm looking at my computer and no one signed up yet, but I'm thinking people wait till the last minute. There's like 48 hours. I'll be able to have that impact. And make a long story short, 48 hours later, I'm checking like in the final minutes, and literally like no one bought the course.
Oh no.
So here I am like 9 months into my second career, and I have no money. I spent a lot of money and I felt like a total failure. So I circled back with the people that said they were interested in it. And I said, what's the reason that you chose not to purchase the course? Was it the content? Did it not hit home with you? And what I found was a pretty consistent message. And the message was, Rob, it's all well and good that I know what I need to do. I know how much I need to save. I know where it's supposed to go, but I can't come up with the money to save. I don't have any money to save. So what point does taking a course on financial planning have to do with it when I can't even fund these goals?
Right. So we got to get back to the basics is what you realize then.
At the same time, I was reading this book called The One Thing. Have you read The One Thing before?
I have.
Yeah. So basically, what's the one thing you can do that by doing it makes everything else either easier or unnecessary? And when it comes to financial planning, it's all about the budget. With financial success, the number one predictor is savings rate. It's not working with a great investment manager. It's not putting money here, paying down debt as opposed to building wealth for the long run. It's all about having money left over at the end of the month in order to do any of it.
Yeah. So budget is the word that we use all the time. Some people have a negative connotation with the word budget. What does it mean to you to budget overall? Like, what's the definition of the word budget from Rob's perspective?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a fan of the word either. I really don't like the word because it has a negative stigma. It's just,
It does.
The idea is right. But when you say budget, I mean, maybe 10% of the population, they get all excited and lit up about it. And then the other 90%, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. It's kind of like the word diet, right?
Right.
Healthy lifestyle sounds better than diet, right?
Does very much so.
Yeah. So what I like to say about budget, it's not a budget. It's spending in alignment with your values and priorities.
I like that. Spending in alignment with your values and your priorities. Write that down, everybody. It's not budgeting. It's just aligning your spending with your values.
Exactly. What happened was, even though I'm a numbers person, I got my CFA, my CFP, I minored in math in college and always been kind of a math nerd. I am awful at traditional budgeting. And my wife is very detail oriented, very pragmatic, very much a get it done kind of a person. And she's better at budgeting than I am. And I'm the budget expert, quote unquote.
Interesting.
So I had to kind of create my own framework to make this work. And it has to do with aligning your spending with your values and priorities. So the way that it looks in our family is I created a framework I call keep, cut back, eliminate. So it's a 3-category budgeting system. Most people use the traditional pie chart of like, this is how much we're spending on housing and food and kids and travel and clothes and personal care and stuff like that. What this says is, what are the things that are really, really important to you that you're spending money on? Let's preserve those. What are the things that someone's spending money on that they like, but they could probably do better with how much they're spending in those areas? And what are the things that they're spending money on that they really don't care about? And so that's where the 3 categories come in.
I like that. So you kind of simplified things by saying 3 categories, which things fall into the 3 categories. So let's start with the keep category. What initially, if you're thinking back kind of to the original process here, was something that you guys definitely had in the keep category versus the cut back versus the get rid of it?
That's a good question. I got to think back. I mean, now it's a lot on raising our kids and making sure our kids have what they need, not in terms of like material things, but in terms of to help them become independent, productive, caring kids. That's a big priority for us right now. So that's why we chose to live in the neighborhood we live in. And we had to take money from other areas that we were spending in and put money into that bucket for our kids. But ultimately, I think a lot of people make the mistake of, so when relationships start, there's you and your spouse or future spouse. If each one of those is a circle, and in those circle are different interests and ways that they like to spend money. So maybe someone likes buying the latest fashion, the other one likes electronics or gadgets or whatever. But they do have some common interests together, so that when they come together as a couple and you think of like 2 circles joining like a Venn diagram, there are things that one likes that the other doesn't, and there are things that they like doing together. So as a couple, it's important to preserve the things that you like doing as a couple. But what happens is with couples is that usually one person has an interest that drives the other one crazy that they spend money on it and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. My husband is a compulsive Amazon purchaser. Everything is purchased on Amazon. And I'm just like, maybe we should hire you, Rob, because what do I do about the fact that every day something shows up at the door from Amazon?
Yeah. It's funny, like when I work with my clients, we actually have an Amazon/Target category. It's like a separate budget category. When we're dissecting the different categories, if we look at the traditional sense, there's housing, food, kids, but Amazon and Target are like different because people tend to spend more than they otherwise need to. But here's the thing, Lauren, if that's something that he really likes to do and it's something that is a keep for him when we're going through this process, the other person doesn't have veto power on that.
Okay, fine. He can keep doing it.
As long as it's not detrimental to the finances. So you have these two spouses spend money on something that the other drives them crazy, like the Amazon purchases. And then all of a sudden kids come into the picture and the kids spending and priorities overtake the couple and the relationship and them as individuals. So now you have like really, really big strife in families and a lot of stress because you have what I call the 3Ds of parenting: daycare, diaper, and doctor bills, which take up a lot of the budget, right? And then you have the fact that you have less time and money to spend with each other as a couple. And then personal interests unrelated to the other spouse, forget about it. Those are out the window. So when we go through the keep process, and this is something that took me a while to figure out how to find that, I don't want to call it balance, but just prioritizing, is that there are 3 categories of keep. There's a keep for you and your spouse if you're in a relationship. I'm saying as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a keep for the two of you as a couple. And then there are keeps for you as a family. So the keeps for a couple you agree on, the keeps for a family you agree on, the keeps as individuals, there's no veto power there. If it's that important to the other person, even if we have no idea why overbuying on Amazon is a big deal for him, if it's a big deal for him, let's just keep that argument at bay. Because what stops couples from getting together is they're always butting heads about the thing that drives the other crazy. And instead of saying, well, I have something that drives you crazy too. Let's just table that.
It's true. Mine is travel, right? I love to be on an airplane in the next place. So if I can keep travel, he can keep Amazon. That's kind of how it's working right now. So I'm seeing where you're going with this. Keep it up.
Yeah. So that's important to you. So let's table those as long as it's not damaging your finances, which I know it's not for you because I listened to the other podcast you had about how you do your budget. So you're fine there, right? So you have your separate things and then you can work together on the cutbacks and the eliminates. The cutbacks are things that you have to have total agreement on. These are things that you're not trying to like revolutionize your spending, but you're trying to have the same experience, but reduce it. So for example, the person who is like going out to lunch every day over work, although none of us are eating out for work right now because we're in our houses, but people say, okay, I'm going to get good with my budget. I'm going to cut my food spending. I'm going to brown bag it 5 days a week. I'm going to pack peanut butter and jelly or whatever. If I'm allergic to peanuts, I'll find some substitute to that. But they try to go cold turkey. And of course, the wheels fall off.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like the toe over the line. Like once the toe goes over the line, it's like, well, I already messed up. So let's just go all in, right?
Let's just eat the whole pizza.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But the idea is, how about instead of 5 days a week, why not just pick one day to pack your lunch and go out the other 4 days? That's a 20% reduction in spending on lunch.
I like the way you presented that. 20% is a huge amount by simply eliminating one day.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not all or nothing. It's just, hey, make some small modifications.
I'm a big believer in gradual change. People don't change drastically unless there's a drastic event that happens to them. It's all about taking the baby steps. And most of the couples I work with and families I work with, they don't have anything in the eliminate column to start because no one wants to give everything up. And I try to ease them out of that. Like if someone's like, oh, I'll give up this, I'll give up that. I'm like, are you sure you're going to give that up? Or are you just going to kind of revert back? They're like, okay, you're right. Let's just put that in the cutback. But the eliminate are things that people can identify that are like, they don't need to do them. Maybe they're detrimental to their health. Certainly not in alignment with their priorities or values. But in the end, so what they have is they have spending that is more in alignment with their priorities and values as individuals, as a couple, and as a family. And as a result of this stuff, the average family I work with, they can cut their spending by 18% without feeling like they're missing out on anything.
Wow, 18 to 20% and not feel the impact of it. I would say that you are definitely a family budget expert because people are probably listening right now. There's no way I could cut back on 18% of my spending, but you have a proven way of doing so. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit about how you set savings goals in your own life right now?
I think it's really important to focus. For anyone who knows Dave Ramsey, I believe in some of the stuff he's doing and not so much in other stuff, but I do think that there is power in focusing on one thing at a time. So it's kind of building up the priorities of what's important. So I have kids, so we need to save up for their colleges, right? Also, my wife and I did think about our future financial independence too, as just a couple. We have a mortgage on our house that we have to think about. Where do we prioritize that? So, just like anything, we know where we want to go. We want to have our kids' 529 plans funded with enough money that we don't want to pay for their whole education and save up everything in there, but we want to have enough that we can do it. We also want them to work so that they have some skin in the game with college, so they're not skipping classes and stuff.
I think that's a really good point to bring up too, is that I think there's a lot of pressure around funding the whole thing and people getting paralysis and doing nothing because they don't feel like they can fund the whole thing. It's definitely, like you said, making your spending align with your values and having a conversation like, well, what does it look like if we don't? What if we just do this amount and, they got to come up with the rest? They're in a much better situation than if they hit age 18 and you haven't saved $1. I mean, what we run into quite a bit at the Student Loan Planner, where you and I are consultants, is people who have gargantuan amounts of Parent Plus loans because they felt bad when the kid got ready to go to college and they hadn't saved anything. And now they wanted to shoulder all of that versus having the conversation on the front end about, we're not going to pay for all of it, but we can put a little something away. So I really like that you and your wife are doing that.
Yeah. I know some people, they're like, well, I mean, gosh, my kids are 8 and 10 and their college tuition is going to be $250,000. So I got to save $250,000 each per kid. It's like, look, I mean, if people who are making that kind of money to be able to save that amount of money are having trouble saving for college, then where's the other 99+% of people that are struggling with that? We certainly don't have any intentions of saving up that amount of money in our kids' 529 plans. We want to have our own financial future too. We don't want our kids to go into debt, but guess what? Just money's finite. You got to make choices. And we want them to have a high quality education, but ultimately the education is the work ethic that they put into it in order to get the most out of their college. But we see our college planning being a portion of dedicated funds and 529 plans because you get the tax advantages and just to have some money dedicated aside for that. We also have other savings that we could use to tap into if we wanted to. And then we'll probably cash flow some of it too. It's like a combination, 3-pronged approach. Plus our kids are going to be applying for merit-based scholarships and saving up their own money to pay for it too. My wife's parents paid for a good portion of her college tuition, but they also made her work and save for college too. And they made her hand deliver the check to the purser's office at the university. And they made her calculate, okay, here's how much it costs. How much is each class? So if you miss a class, it costs however many dollars per class that you skip. And that's kind of a waste of money. So they made her go through all this stuff and she never missed one class. I think she missed one class in all 4 years because she was sick.
They created some awareness around the actual value of this thing as opposed to the dollars just get paid and they have no idea about why this is so important. I love that.
Yeah, it worked really well for her. She's always been very good with money, very responsible with it, like never overspending, always saving first. And my experience honestly was different than that. I didn't really learn delayed gratification and that money could be finite. Not that I was a big spender or anything like that. Like I said, I was never been a very showy person, but I just didn't even track it. I just never really was conscious of it. My spending always seemed to fit in within my income. I never had any credit card debt or anything like that, but I was never really conscious about that I should be saving, even though I'm a numbers person and I know how compound interest works.
I really love that you're acknowledging that the process is not perfect and that you weren't born with all the answers. You have kind of learned things over time. You've learned some things the hard way. And I think that everyone can relate to the ideas like we gain knowledge, but we don't get it perfect. Even as financial professionals, I have a CFP as well. And we've learned we're ingrained in this on a daily basis, but I'm probably getting ready to sell a house for way less than it's worth. And it's cut me in my soul because I'm like, this was a terrible financial decision. So bad financial decisions don't necessarily just poof into the air, but also it's about over time realizing and learning from the different things that you're doing. So I really love that you're driving home that point. Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the expenses associated with kids? So feeding little monsters and birthday parties. I know for me, I hear that parents have kids' birthday parties pretty much every weekend. And so now that I'm a little bit older and a lot of my friends have kids, they're like, oh, so-and-so's birthday this weekend, so-and-so. It just seems like they're always buying a gift for this or that. And I'm sure that's a huge part of the budget. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, in terms of food, one of our priorities and one of our values is healthy eating. And so we buy very fresh foods. My wife works full time and she comes home but she's also the cook. I can maybe make like toast or a bowl of cereal. That's about the extent of my cooking. Maybe a grilled cheese from time to time. Fortunately, she's very good at it and she loves doing it. And she always puts some good, healthy options on the table too. But the funny thing is, a lot of times people think that eating healthy is expensive. Well, I've analyzed a lot of people's food budgets, and I can tell you that our food budget is much lower than other people's food budgets because of how we shop. So kids are expensive. They eat a lot of food. So it's just about being a little bit conscious. So one of the things that I started doing is most people, they go in the grocery store and they pick what they like, they pick what they know, and they just grab it off the shelf. They don't really look at the price of anything. They take it off. They get to the grocery line. Everything gets rung up in total. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did I spend that much money on food? And then what happens again is the next week they go grocery shopping and the same thing happens. Like, oh my gosh, why do we keep spending so much money on food? There's, of course, going out to eat with families, because think about it. If it's just a couple, there's just two people eating. But if with us, it's a family of 5. We have to pay for 5 meals when we go out. So we don't restrict our kids on what they can choose, but we try to help them understand like sharing food, or if there's any leftovers, we'll always take it home and have them eat it as a second meal. But going back to the grocery store example, what really helped me is, let's just say we're looking at some fish that we want to cook for dinner. And there's 2 options. There's like the tilapia that we could bread and pan fry, or there's like the salmon we could cook in the oven. And let's say the tilapia is like $17 a pound and the salmon's on sale for $10 a pound. If we're happy for either option, just go with the cheaper option. Right there, that's a $7 savings. That's just on one item in the grocery store.
Right.
And same thing with any other produce, the Honeycrisp apples, which are $5 a pound versus the Fuji apples, which are $1.50 a pound. So we get apples, and we like Pink Lady apples because there's like a little bit tart and crunchy. They're awesome. And they're like $2.50 a pound. So it's just understanding how to do that. Just 2 things that are perfectly acceptable. Just pick the cheaper one. Most people I work with that are mainly 6-figure earners that I work with, they're spending in the $1,500 to $2,000 a month on food, going out and groceries. Our food budget is more in like the $1,100 or $1,200 a month range.
Wow. So 50% less than the average client that you're working with.
Yeah. And that's to feed a family of 5. And I can tell you though, too, that our food spending has not gone up over the 10 years that we've been tracking our spending. It's actually stayed the same, which means we're getting better because food prices have gone up and we're spending the same.
I love that. I love that. That's a good way to be able to kind of check in with yourself and say, like, how is this going? Because inflation's a thing. Food prices are going up on a regular basis, but the cost is not going up. So there actually is some savings built in the sense that you're still spending the same amount years later.
Yeah. And in terms of birthdays, so this is something where we have to be careful where we send our kids messages, how we send our kids messages, because so my 2 boys' birthdays, they happen to be around the holidays. They're in like late November, December.
Yikes.
It's like a toy explosion. It can be, right? Because they're getting those gifts and Hanukkah gifts and all that stuff. In fact, there was one day, it was like a 10-day period where we had Thanksgiving, 2 of my boys' birthdays, my wife's birthdays in between there, and all of Hanukkah in like 10 days. And we don't go crazy with gifts, but sometimes grandparents love to go crazy with gifts. And with the parties, kids will ask for anything because they might not understand that money is finite and that there's only a limited amount. But even if we could spend all we wanted to on their birthday parties, we want to do it within reason. And if their friend had a birthday party at a place that costs $1,000 to rent out with the food and all that stuff, like, we're just not going to do that. We'll keep it simpler. We'll maybe get a lower package if we go to the same place. And we just try to keep the cost to a minimum. We don't want our kids thinking that they're entitled to have whatever they want just because they happen to be born in a family of people who have been fortunate to have some savings and a little bit of wealth built up.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So birthday party every year for each one of your children, or not so much a party, but maybe acknowledgement of the day?
For 1 and 2-year-olds, we just had family over for dinner. And then 3, 4, 5, 6, we spend money on birthday parties with friends, but we try to do it where we invited a lot of people, but for a lower price point. Mm-hmm. But then now, as they're getting older, we're having them have smaller birthday parties with a more select group of friends, like maybe 3 or 4 that we can fit in the car and drive in our minivan, right? Because I'm a dad, I got a minivan. I used minivan. We can fit them in the car and all go to a party together and have them a special day. We can spend a little bit less than we would normally, but we can also make sure the experience is a little bit more personalized and customized to them.
I love that. So creating an intimate experience versus something that's going to cost a lot per head, and kids may not be able to play with all the kids because there's so many kids there in the first place. So yeah, which also focuses on building relationships too.
And that being said, by the way, I'm not a judgmental person. I don't try to tell people what they should and shouldn't spend their money on. So if birthday parties are some people love birthday parties, and some parents, because they had great birthday parties growing up, or because maybe they didn't have a birthday parties growing up, so they want their kids to have a different experience. If birthday parties are your jam and you want to spend money on that, totally okay. You should go for it if that's how you want your kids to celebrate.
As long as that spending aligns with your values, because your values are not my values, they're not Rob's values, they're yours.
They are your values, and no one should tell you what you should and shouldn't spend money on. Not even me, right? A budget expert. I can help guide people through the process of discovering what that is, but I never tell people that they should or shouldn't start spending money unless it's like sabotaging their finances.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. No judgment zone, people. Another thing that I say as we kind of wrap up the birthday conversation is that if you're looking for ideas on how to contribute to a birthday in a way that is very meaningful, what's getting really popular now is contributing to a kid's 529 plan. So if you have all the toys in the world and you know that the kids don't necessarily need anything else, something that a lot of parents and friends of family are doing, or, even parents are saying, please don't bring toys. Here's the link to contribute to the 529 plan. So now you're contributing to their education. And that money is, like you said, going to compound over time. So it's going to make a much bigger impact than a toy that they play with for a short period of time. So as you're thinking about alternative ways to gift to children, that's something else people should consider.
For sure. Yeah, some people enjoy the process of giving. So grandparents, for example, they might do that, but they also want to see the joy on their grandkids' face when they give them a toy. A lot of times there's a big rat race to get toys for kids for their birthday parties. I mean, birthday parties every weekend when they're school aged. And it's like, man, okay, how many times are we going to go to Target? How many things we have to buy on Amazon? And it's fine. Obviously, we want to give that joy to people, but we also don't want to go overboard or give them something that we don't think they're going to use. We also try to involve the kids. In fact, buying presents for birthday parties is a great way to engage your kids in making financially sound things. So we'll go to Target and we'll say, okay, your budget is $15. Pick out a toy that you think your friend would enjoy, but it can't be more than $15. So they actually have to go through and look at the prices and see if that's worth it, or see if that fits within the budget. And they understand what things cost, and they learn to make financial decisions based upon a limited budget, which is a great skill set, by the way.
I love that. I love that. I love that. What other ways are you talking to your kids about money, and strategies are you implementing to kind of teach them age-appropriate financial topics?
This is what I want to do with the next iteration. I actually wanted to start with helping kids get better with their spending. But I thought, well, if the kids are good with spending, but their parents are setting bad examples, then kids are going to do what they see their parents doing, no matter what their parents say. Or they're going to do the exact opposite. But anyway, I thought I'd start with parents. But there's probably 5 steps that kids need to learn. And frankly, this isn't just kids, this is adults too. But for kids, number 1, things cost money, right? Going into Target's great because it has everything, right? Or Walmart is another good example. A store that has toys, home goods, furnishings, whatever. So wherever you shop, whatever big box store you shop in, let your kids walk through the store and they're going to look at stuff and they're like, oh, can I have this? And they're like, well, that costs money and that costs $10. It's not trying to teach them a lesson about money. It's just making the observation that things cost money. Now we have to go pay for it. This doesn't belong to us. This belongs to the store until we actually pay for it. After we pay for it, then it's ours. That kind of stuff. So things cost money. Number 2 is money is finite. So we can't just buy whatever we want whenever we want. There's a limited amount. Even with credit cards available and loans, it feels like money's infinite, right? We can get whatever we want, but it's just like time. There's only 24 hours in the day and we only have a certain amount of funds based upon what's made. So we have to figure out what can we do within those constraints of what we have coming in. So things cost money. Money is finite. The third thing is, because of those 2 things, we have to make choices. So this is really, really important when we're talking about words with kids. A lot of people use the word, we can't afford that. We can't afford this. And when people use we can't afford with kids, it scares the heck out of them because they're thinking that they won't have their needs met. There are plenty of families that are in that case, and the word afford might actually be true, but I substitute the word afford with choice. So we have to make a choice. We can either choose to pay for this thing, or we can choose to have our house heated, or we can choose to get this, or we can choose to get you ice cream after we leave here. We can't do both. We have to make a choice.
I really, really love that. I think that that's a great way to frame it up. And sometimes we take for granted how important the words that we're using are setting the money mindset for our children and how that will affect them over the long term. So that's a really great tip.
Yeah. And I have adult clients who say, I can't afford that. I'm like, you can actually afford whatever you want. I mean, to a limit, but you have to make choices. What's more important to you? And then the fourth thing is delayed gratification is really, really important. So just because you want some doesn't mean you can have it now. You got to wait. You might have to work or save up or do whatever in order to have it down the road. The way this works practically with our kids is we started them with money that we give them every week. And the money we give them every week has to be substantial enough that they can actually like buy something with it over time. So we can't give them like a dime every week. They can't buy anything for like a year, and they don't understand the concept of it. So we actually give our kids $1 a week per their age. So we started when my boys were 6 and 4. My older son got $6 a week. My younger son got $4 a week. And we had the 3 jars, save, spend, give. And at the beginning, we made them equalize the bucket, put in each one. But then as they got older, we said, you can put at least $1 in every bucket and you can choose what to do with the rest of the money.
Mm-hmm.
At first, the save money was kind of like spend money. So like if they wanted to spend something, that we weren't teaching them delayed gratification yet, just teaching them that you have to save money. But then over time, now they have to write it down and they have to wait at least a week from the time they wrote it down until they can actually buy it with their saved money.
Ah, I like it.
Again, we're not trying to like change the world. We have 18 years until they're not in our roof to teach them about money. But it's these little messages that we give them over time. And my older son said something really astute. When he was 8, he was putting like $6 in his spend and $1 in his save and $1 in his donate. And he really wanted to buy something and save up for it. But he kept on spending his money because he could use that money anytime he wanted. And he came up with this on his own. He came up to me and said, Dad, I think this week I'm going to put $1 in my spend and I'm going to put $6 in my save because I really want this thing and it's taken me a long time to get it. So I'm just going to put more in my save money until I get there.
So he got there on his own. Yes, I love it.
Yeah, he got there on his own. And I was like so proud of him for realizing that. But it just shows that teaching these lessons early on really, really works. It's going to have a big impact on the rest of his life. We haven't gotten into like emergency fund, how to have savings, like investing. We're not there yet. He's 10 and my younger one is 8. And our 3-year-old, we haven't done anything with this yet. We're working on the things cost money part.
Right.
Yeah. That's some of the things we do. Oh, another thing that's really important is that we stopped buying them discretionary things. So even like they want a pack of gum, they got to buy it themselves. They want a toy that's not on their birthday or not a special occasion, they got to buy it themselves. We don't buy anything discretionary for them right now. We give them enough money on a week that if they want something bad enough, they can save up for it.
Got it. And are there chores attached to the money that they earn on a weekly basis, or is it completely independent of chores or other responsibilities?
It's independent of that right now. And this is kind of the tricky balance for parents. It's like we want our kids to understand that work is how you make money. And that is actually the 5th component. I went over the first 4, delayed gratification. The 5th one is that money comes from earning it, right? You got to earn it. You got to provide value to somebody that they're willing to pay you money in exchange for that service. But at the same time, they're also part of our family. So our kids, they got to make their beds. They clean the dinner table and sweep up after dinner. They pack their own breakfast and lunches for school. They have to clean up the playroom at least once a week. They have all these responsibilities that come as part of being a family member, but we're not compensating them extra for that work yet.
You do it because you're supposed to. Yeah.
Right. So here's why we don't do that. I've heard plenty of stories where their kids aren't motivated by money. So they're like, if you don't clean up your toys, you're not going to get the $2. They don't care about money. So they just don't do the chores. And then what does a parent do? They're kind of put in a pickle, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the hard work comes after the fact. And I think it's really important too, to just be able to earn their own money through maybe a business like a lemonade stand or something. I say business very loosely, but something where they understand that people will pay them in exchange for something that they return, teach them about customer service and product stuff like that on a very small scale when they're young too. We're getting to that point right now.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We have covered so much today. I feel like people are going to be much better at managing their family budget. We've given them a lot of tips, a lot of tools. Are there any other things that you want to share about family budgeting, kids and finances, your budget, whatever you want to share as we kind of wrap up here today?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. I think number one, we need to set values of where you want your money to go. Think of them for yourself, for you as a couple, and for you as a family. That's a big point. But probably the biggest point, if there was one takeaway from this call that I want people to do, is don't forget about budgeting. Okay, forget about budgeting. We just start tracking your spending. The first step is not budgeting. The first step is understanding where your money's going. So if you can decide what your values and priorities are as individuals, as a couple, and as a family, and then you just track your spending and just see where you stand.
What tools can they use to track?
So I personally use Mint. I've tried You Need a Budget. I've tried Every Dollar. I've tried Clarity and Tiller and all these other ones. And everyone works for different people. Mint has the most capabilities, but it's also one of the hardest ones to use. So I'd say, just like any financial advice I usually give people, like I can give someone the best financial plan, but it needs to resonate with them. So whatever budgeting tool that resonates with you, that works for you, that's the one you should use. So try out a few and see what works. It's kind of like stepping on the scale, and we have to release judgment and forgive ourselves. One of the things I say to myself is, my life will turn out based upon the choices I make right now and today. And I need to forgive myself for mistakes I made in the past and move on and just kind of get over it, right? And then another thing is, there's a lot of guilt and shame around money. And this guy, Hal Elrod, who's like the Miracle Morning guy, if you've heard of him before, he's awesome. He says, guilt is a signal for learning, not discouragement.
Ooh, that's good.
It's good. It's deep. So if you're feeling guilty about your money, don't think of it as a sign to be discouraged that you're not good with money or that you can't do it. Look at it as a sign as, I feel guilty about this. Let me get over that feeling and figure out how I can get better at it. But anyway, just start tracking your spending. Pick any budgeting app you want. Start tracking your spending. Let go of the past, move on. And the goal is to build the skill sets so you can get better going forward.
You've given us so much knowledge and wisdom today. I'm sure the audience is going to be implementing some of these strategies, but some people need a little bit of help. So like this, you might need a personal trainer to actually get your goals. And with budgeting, you might need a little bit of help. So where can people find you if they want the Family Budget Expert?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, familybudgetexpert.com. And I have a free 5-step guide that will take people through the process. They can download it for free on the website. So familybudgetexpert.com, and just sign up for that. And email me too. My email is Rob, R-O-B, at familybudgetexpert.com. So if you have any questions at all, if you're struggling anyway, I'm here to help. The purpose of me starting this was to help more people than I could working at a company on its own, and want to expand my reach and help as many people. So please reach out to me if you need any help.
Rob, you are awesome at life. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, Lauren, greatly appreciate you having me. And I'm honored to be a guest because I just love your podcast. And like I said, I've been sharing it around with everybody. So thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Rob's money memoir. While he is the family budget expert, he shared a lot of valuable lessons for everyone. And even if you're flying solo and you're only managing your own finances, the 3-category budgeting system of keep, reduce, and eliminate is still something that you can benefit from doing with your finances. Rob mentioned that he uses Mint for tracking his budget, but he recommends that you do whatever works for you. I personally like using YNAB, which is short for You Need a Budget. That's my app. But I agree with Rob. What's most important is that you find the system that you like and you will stick with. That is the important part. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. And don't forget, if you need help getting your finances in order, you can enroll in the free Ultimate Money Game Plan, free till the end of this month. Check the show notes for details. And as always, if you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your money memoir, please contact us through the website, worth-listening.com.